My mother-in-law told my wife I was having an affair the night I turned down her third attempt to kiss me. She'd been in our guest room for 6 days. She left day 7. My wife asked me to leave instead. That's not the beginning, but it's where everything broke open. You need to understand something about Renee before this makes any sense. Renee Abernathy was 51 years old when I met her, and she was the kind of woman who had never fully accepted that a room could exist without her being the center of it. Not cruel exactly. Not the way you'd recognize immediately. Charming, attentive. The kind of person who remembers your drink order on the second meeting and then uses that to make you feel like you owe her something. My wife, Camille, had grown up understanding her mother as the son, warm, necessary, and capable of burning you if you got the angle wrong. She loved her without illusions, or she thought she did. I met Camille at a conference in Charlotte. She was a contract attorney, I was in logistics management. We argued about supply chain ethics over bad hotel coffee for 2 hours before either of us thought to exchange numbers. We were married in under 3 years. Renee attended our engagement party in a dress the same color as Camille's, I noticed. Camille said she was just excited. I filed it away. The first time was at Christmas, 8 months into our marriage. Camille had gone to bed early with a headache. I was in the kitchen cleaning up. Renee came downstairs in a silk robe, poured herself a glass of wine she didn't need, and stood very close to me at the counter. She said she'd always thought Camille was lucky to have someone like me. She said it the way you say it when you mean something else. With eye contact that lasted a beat too long and her hand on my forearm and a pause after where she waited to see what I'd do. I stepped back. I said I was heading to bed. I said good night clearly. She smiled like nothing had happened, like the moment hadn't existed. I didn't tell Camille. I told myself I'd misread it. I told myself a lot of things that were easier than the alternative. The second time was in April. Renee had driven up to help us move into the new house. Camille was coordinating with movers in the front room. I was carrying boxes from the truck. Renee intercepted me in the hallway, took the box from my hands, set it down on the floor, and said she needed to tell me something. She said she thought about me. She said it plainly, no preamble. Like she'd been building toward it for months and had finally decided to stop the construction. I told her that what she was describing wasn't something I was open to, not now, not ever. I told her I was in love with her daughter, and that this conversation needed to end here. She looked at me for a long time. Then she picked up the box and handed it back to me and said, I just think you deserve to know how I feel, like she'd done me a favor. I came very close to telling Camille that night. I held it in my mouth like something I couldn't swallow. But Renee was helping with the house. But Camille was happy, but I'd already handled it. But there was no good version of what came next if I said the words out loud, so I swallowed them. The third time was one that cost me everything. Renee came to stay with us in October when Camille's father, her parents had been divorced for 11 years, had a minor cardiac event that turned out to be benign but shook everyone anyway. Camille was working and monitoring and coordinating insurance calls. Renee was in the guest room, theoretically there for support. On the fourth night, I came home late from a warehouse audit. The house was dark except for the kitchen light. Renee was sitting at the island with 2 glasses of wine already poured. She told me Camille was asleep. She said she'd been thinking about what I'd said in April, and that she understood I was committed to my marriage. But that commitments weren't immovable, that people changed, that feelings like hers didn't just stop because someone asked them to. She reached across the counter. I moved back. I told her I needed her to hear me clearly. I told her this was the third time and that if there was a fourth, I would tell Camille the full story of all three. I told her that I loved her daughter and that she was going to stop this or I was going to stop it for her. She went still. The kind of still that isn't calm, the kind that's calculation. You should be careful, she said quietly, about what you threaten. I left the kitchen. I went to our bedroom and lay in the dark next to my wife and felt the specific dread of someone who has just said the right thing at exactly the wrong moment. 2 days later, Renee told Camille I was having an affair. I want to describe what it looks like when your wife believes something terrible about you. It's not what you'd expect from movies. It's not shouting. It's not thrown objects. It's quieter. It's Camille sitting at the kitchen table with her hands very still and her face doing something I had never seen her face do. Something that looked like grief wearing the clothes of anger, because grief was too frightening to show directly. She said Renee had told her I'd been making advances, that I'd made her uncomfortable for months, that I'd cornered her in the hallway during the move, that I'd come into the kitchen 2 nights ago. I heard all of it and understood all of it and felt the architecture of it, every true fact inverted, the hallway, the kitchen. Every moment I remembered as rejection, repackaged as pursuit, as precise. It was the work of someone who had been building a case since April. Camille, I said. She looked at me. Her mother was sitting 3 feet away, watching. What do you want me to say? Camille asked. I want you to ask me what happened. She was quiet. I want you to ask me, I said again, before you decide. What happened, she said. But her voice had already made a decision. I told her everything, all 3 times. Christmas, the hallway, the kitchen, her robe and the wine glass, and you deserve to know how I feel. I didn't editorialize. I didn't call Renee names. I just told Camille exactly what I had seen and heard in sequence. When I finished, the kitchen was silent. Renee said, he's lying. She said it without flinching, the way someone says it when they've been waiting for the cue. She said, Camille, sweetheart, think about what makes more sense. You've known me your entire life. And there it was, the thing I could not beat, not with facts, not with logic. Not with 30 years of nothing stacked against 30 years of everything. Camille looked at her mother, and she looked at me, and I watched her face do the arithmetic of it, the terrible, impossible arithmetic of it. She asked me to go stay at my brother's for a few days. Marcus, my brother, made me sleep on his pull-out couch and did not ask me a single question until I'd eaten something. Then he sat across from me and let me tell the whole story without interrupting. When I finished, he said, "What do you have?" I said I had nothing. He said, "Think harder." I thought there was a woman named Diane Okoro. She'd been Renee's closest friend for over a decade, until about 2 years before I met Camille. They had a falling out. Camille had mentioned it once, vaguely said it was about something Renee had done that Diane wouldn't forgive. She didn't know the details, and Renee had never offered them. It took me 4 hours to find Diane Okoro's phone number through mutual connections. When she picked up, I introduced myself and told her what was happening. The silence that followed lasted long enough that I thought she'd hung up. Then she said, "She did the same thing to my ex-husband." Diane drove 3 hours to our house. She hadn't spoken to Renee in 2 years. She didn't want to. She came because she said she'd spent 2 years thinking about what happened to her marriage and her friendship and wishing she'd had someone who knew who could have said something before it was too late. She sat at our kitchen table, and she told Camille everything. Renee had spent 2 years doing what she'd spent 4 months doing to me, making herself indispensable, engineering proximity, telling Diane's husband things designed to make him feel unseen in his marriage. When he'd rejected her, she'd gone to Diane with a different story. Diane's marriage hadn't survived it. I watched Camille listen. I watched her face move through things that had no names. At some point, Renee tried to interrupt. She said Diane was bitter. She said the circumstances were different. She used the word complicated the way she'd use the word careful with me, like it was a shield. Camille held up her hand, a small gesture. Her mother went quiet. The room held its breath. Camille asked her mother one question. She asked it slowly. The voice she uses when she has already finished deciding but is giving you the formal chance to prove her wrong. "When Marcus called me from the hallway during the move," she said, "and asked if I needed help in the front room." "Where was he standing?" Renee said she didn't remember. "The box he was carrying," Camille said. "What was in it?" Renee said kitchen things, probably. "It was my grandmother's dishes," Camille said. "I told him 3 times to be careful. He came back to the front room to tell me he'd set it down to rest his arms." "You were with me." She looked at her mother. "There's no hallway version where he cornered you, because I know where he was." Renee's jaw shifted. Her eyes moved the way they had in the kitchen that last night. Not hurt. Calculating. "You're choosing him," she said. "I'm choosing what happened," Camille said. Renee left that evening. She didn't apologize. I want to be clear about that. She gathered her things. She walked to the door, and she said to Camille in a voice that had gone very small, "You're going to regret this." Not a threat exactly. Something more like a reflex. The last move of someone who had spent a lifetime using other people's need for peace as a weapon and had finally run out of peace to weaponize. The door closed. Camille stood in the kitchen for a long time with her hand over her mouth. I didn't move toward her immediately. The flight deck teaches you that there are moments when rushing is the wrong thing, when what someone needs is the space to let the landing happen. After a while, she turned to me. "You didn't tell me," she said. "The first time or the second time?" "No," I said. I looked at her. I thought about all the reasons that had seemed like reasons at the time. I wanted to protect you. I thought I could handle it. I didn't want to put you in the position of choosing. I thought I could contain it, I said. I thought if I shut it down hard enough, it would stop. She nodded slowly. "That was a decision you made for me." "Yes," I said. "I know. I'm sorry." The kitchen was very quiet. "I believed her," Camille said. Her voice broke on the last word just slightly. "For 2 days I believed her." "I know. That's its own thing I have to sit with." "I know that too," I said. She exhaled. Long, deliberate. Kind of breath that's really a recalibration. "Okay," she said. "Not fine, not fixed, just a marker in the ground. Okay, we are here. We begin from here." Diana Coro came to dinner 3 months later, her own idea. She and Camille had talked several times by then. They traded stories in the way survivors trade stories, not to wound each other, but to understand the shape of the thing that had moved through both their lives. Diane was seeing someone. She seemed, I want to use this word carefully, lighter, not healed. Just no longer carrying something she'd been carrying alone. She told Camille at dinner that she'd spent 2 years being angry at the wrong person. At her ex-husband, for the easy crime of being fallible. Not at the architecture around him. She's very good, Diane said. At making you look at the person in front of you instead of the hands behind the curtain, Camille nodded. "I know," she said. "I grew up watching her do it. And I think that was the first time I understood the full weight of it. What Camille had actually carried into our marriage. What she'd spent 30 years being trained to not see." Camille called her mother once more. 6 weeks after she left, I wasn't in the room. I don't know everything that was said. I know it was short. I know Renee didn't apologize. I know she used the word misunderstood twice and the word intentions once. Camille came out of the bedroom afterward and sat on the couch and looked at the window for a while. "She really believes her version," Camille said finally. "I don't think she's lying, exactly. I think she rewrote it as it happened, scene by scene. I thought about that." "Does that change anything?" I asked. "No," she said. "Understanding why a fire starts doesn't mean you walk back into it." She looked at me. "But I want to do therapy, both of us. Not because we're broken. Because I want to understand what I missed and why. And I want us to know how to tell each other hard things before they become crises." Yes, I said. I didn't hesitate. We've been in therapy for 4 months now. Our therapist's name is Dr. Peter Anand. He has a plant in the corner of his office that Camille has asked about twice. She says it looks too healthy to be real. He insists it's real. Last week, he asked me when I'd learned to handle difficult things quietly instead of sharing them. I thought about it for a long time. I said probably around the same time I learned that sharing them made things worse, that the people around me found the problem easier to manage when I managed it invisibly. He nodded. He wrote something down. He asked Camille the same question. She said probably around the same time she learned to look at what her mother was pointing at instead of what her mother was doing. We looked at each other across the office. Dr. Anand let the silence sit. That's what they're trained to do. The good ones. Let the silence sit until it becomes something you can carry instead of something that carries you. Renee sent a text to Camille on her birthday in November. 2 lines, happy birthday, I hope you're well. Camille read it once, she didn't respond. She showed it to me. Then she put her phone down on the counter and went back to whatever she was making for dinner. Some doors, she said, don't need to be reopened. They just need to stay closed long enough that you stop hearing the knock. I put my arms around her from behind. Outside, it was raining. The food smelled good. We were okay.